Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And welcome to the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen. We are just 1 week away from the granddaddy of them all, WrestleMania 40. Philadelphia. It's going to be a happening. Once again, I'm Juice Springsteen. This is the Juice Box. Follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen, Instagram at Juicy Wrestling Closet. Subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts. If you have some time, swing by iTunes. Leave a rating and review. Really would help the podcast grow, and I do appreciate your support. It's also on Spotify and Google Podcasts. I do believe Google Podcasts is going down within the next week, so enjoy it on Google Podcasts for one more week. Potentially it could be going under, I believe. So the Juice Box will be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, of course, with iTunes, and juicysteen.podbean.com. And additionally, so we're going to get into Raw, of course, probably near the end of the show, SmackDown, some AEW talk. We're going to finish up with hashtag AskJuice. But additionally, I'd like to just lay out some of the stuff going on here behind the scenes at the Juice Box. You will be hearing this episode as it stands today, March 29th, Friday, March 29th. Next week will be a pretty big week. I mean, it's WrestleMania week for everybody involved. And the Juice Box will be trying to do the best that it can to satiate all of the wrestling corners of the world that we can. So we will be getting a SIP series on April 1st. I will not reveal that yet, who that is. I will reveal that Sunday. It'll be the whole. I'm going to reveal the entire week's worth of what's going on social media. Triple Threat Theater Volume 4, of course, is Tuesday. That is a really fun episode. It's all WrestleMania based. A lot of great stuff. Donnie, Josh Cross, myself really dove deep into our favorite matches, moments, manias in general, worst manias, everything in between. So that is on Tuesday. The prediction show will be out either Thursday and Friday, or potentially just Friday. Quite honestly, and I'll peel back the curtain, it is better now with 2 nights of WrestleMania to produce 2 episodes where we just talk night 1 on one episode and night 2 on the next, because how many matches could possibly be there? It really could drag if it's all by itself. However, right now there's only 2 matches for night 2 and only 1 match for night 1, and 7 additional matches that have yet to be placed on a night specifically. So hopefully by the recording date next week, we find out when specifically these nights, what matches will be taking place on each night, so that maybe I can release 2 separate episodes. But let's just assume that's not going to happen, and I would wager Friday, potentially Thursday. We'll see how it goes. One of those 2 days, you will get the WrestleMania prediction show here on the Juice Box, featuring some former and guests that have been on the show, some familiar faces that are to the Juice Box, to the particular prediction shows that we do. But once it's recorded, then we can really discuss more in depth. But all that stuff will be announced Sunday. for WrestleMania week, which will be cool. Additionally, I will be announcing some other interesting nuggets about the Juice Box going forward, which will be on social media. So stay up to social media this weekend. You'll see a few interesting tidbits for the Juice Box and its future going forward. So I'm really looking forward to showing everybody that. So we will see what happens as we get closer to WrestleMania week. Because April 1st, that Monday, we got an episode dropping, and then another one, and then a couple days later we'll have the big prediction show. The following week, I'm gonna wager that there's some sort of audio throughout the weekend, WrestleMania weekend, when I'm gonna be there. Depending on what specific shows and events and places I attend, I'm looking to, get some sort of buzz and engage the atmosphere of WrestleMania weekend before night one, after night one, before night two, potentially after night two. Randomly, as I go to the events, we're going to cover certain things, certain pieces of the Juice Box as Juice, and his comrades traverse the Philadelphia landscape. I'm sure you'll hear some poignant comments from potentially Josh Cross, Josh Eisenberg, some other, friends of mine that are definitely going to be in town or that I'm attending WrestleMania with. I'm looking to do some sort of, it's not a vlog, but it'll be, again, like the best way I can state it is getting audio, grabbing the buzz for the weekend in the city throughout the weekend, and then that episode, as long as it's worthwhile. It all depends on what I get, but that will be released sometime in the following week, and I would wager there'll be an episode separately to review the weekend, but that's all 2 weeks away, so we won't really dive into there. But if you do run into me, Philadelphia WrestleMania weekend, you might get asked some questions about the weekend and what you're looking forward to, and I'm looking forward to just talking to a bunch of wrestling fans all WrestleMania weekend. So a lot going on here in the Juice Box. As I said, this weekend will be pretty cool. Just showing off some ideas that we got going forward here, some certain tweaks to the show, and just the growth of the show going forward as we enter WrestleMania week for the second year in a row here on the Juice Box. So appreciate all the support. Of course, Wrestling Nation gets a lot of that support, and so they'll get a lot of the thank yous on my end. They really help the show keep kicking, and a lot of the Ask Juice material comes deep into Wrestling Nation, specifically Josh Cross. However, sometimes he goes a little off the beaten path, but we'll answer some good poignant questions as we move forward in this show. Let's get into the wrestling. Enough about the Juice Box. That's all going to be all the important Juice Box stuff is going to happen outside of this show in the next couple of days. So leave it to there. Let's get into SmackDown. We're going to go SmackDown and then into Raw. We're really going to dive into Raw, of course. And then we'll brush up on some AEW, discuss a little bit. And then we'll end with some Ask Juice as we really get close now to WrestleMania weekend and WrestleMania week here on the Juice Box. SmackDown, we finally had the Roman Cody face-to-face interaction. We also had Rey Mysterio and Santos Escobar in a one-on-one. Carl Anderson looked like a cruiserweight out there on Friday. A lot of interesting stuff. But Dominic Mysterio came out and interfered, kind of cost Rey the match, giving Santos the victory. Really don't know what's going to happen with Dom at WrestleMania, with Rey at WrestleMania. Could we see a tag where Ray and maybe Carlito? It's too soon to throw Bad Bunny in there. But, versus Santos and Dom. And maybe if Dom does that, it's kind of like him screwing over the Judgment Day. And then in that regard, the Judgment Day kind of, doesn't want him there. And they kind of break away. I don't know what they're going to plan for that. But we'll see. I'm hoping Ray and Dom get some sort of match at WrestleMania. I don't know if I want to, run their singles match back from last year. Unless it were, hair versus mask or something to that effect. But we'll see. As I said, 7 matches outside of the 3 huge main events have been announced. And we don't know what days they are. And there haven't been any more matches announced. Tonight on SmackDown, though, we will find out the final 2 tag teams involved in the 6-pack tag team ladder match for the tag team titles, which should be fun as well. Like I said, we had Grayson Waller and Austin Theory against the OC. Carl Anderson looked like he was preparing for the G1. Man, I don't know. I like them on NXT if they can help talent. I like them on the main roster if they're helping put over talent. Unfortunately, if they're not with AJ Styles, I'm not sure what their ceiling is in regards to being able to challenge for titles or really be in the mix. So we'll see what the future holds for those 2 guys. Io Sky defeated Naomi, and I've got to think. So Jade Cargill, I guess call it debuts on SmackDown officially later tonight, and I don't know if that's I doubt it'll be a match. So is she going to get involved with this Naomi damage control outside of Bayley and Io Sky thing? Bianca Belair also doesn't have a match. Are we going to have a 6-woman tag? There's a lot that could be going on for WrestleMania with those women, and I think that's where we're headed, is a tag or a 6-woman tag. But, who knows what's possible. I was really thinking Jade was going to get a singles match at WrestleMania, potentially. I also was kind of nervous that if she does get a match like that, it's going to potentially, show that, she might need more work, or maybe she's ready now because they haven't had a match since Royal Rumble. But not sure where they're going to go with those women. But they got to be on the card. Right now, there's only 2 women's matches on the card. That's Io Sky and Bayley, and Rhea and Becky Lynch. So you'd think we'd get at least 1 more, probably 2 more women's matches on the card in some way. But yeah, the last segment was Cody and Roman. They both promised to show up alone, which of course didn't happen. No real new information was, thrown out there. But of course, Jimmy and Solo Sikoa showed up in the crowd, and in response, we had Jey Uso and Seth Rollins. So all those guys had, both Cody and Roman had their respective, backup plans in place. They couldn't trust each other as far as they could throw each other, and rightfully so. They had all hands on deck to help them after the fact. So, so with that going on, I'm not sure what, I had thought maybe we were going to get, with that happening, maybe a tag match leading up to WrestleMania, because right now it's Jimmy and Jay. Seth, of course, was with Drew, but a little bit of CM Punk in there. Seth and Cody also have the Roman Rock tag on night 1, but Seth seems to be kind of falling behind the wayside on that aspect of it, and we'll get to that in a moment. There's 10 matches already, but we've got to probably put 3, 4, maybe even 5 more matches additionally on this card to kind of max it out. So not sure where that's going to come. I'm assuming, we'll get some more answers tonight. Other than that, I doubt you're going to announce a match on the SmackDown one day out of, WrestleMania, although, crazier things have absolutely happened. I'm not sure that they would do that, though. I do think maybe by Raw, the April 1st Raw from Barclays, where The Rock is announced, is where you'll probably get some finalization on some matches. And maybe throughout social media, we'll get some answers as well, at least after tonight's SmackDown. But outside of that, SmackDown was what it was. I'm thinking tonight will be a little bit more intriguing. But you want to talk intriguing. You want to talk potentially the best Raw, the most Attitude Era feeling Raw since the Attitude Era. And this is a guy you're listening to who lived through the Attitude Era and understands how important it was, how fun it was, how off the cuff it felt at times. And my God, did we get one hell of an episode of Raw this past Monday. To start the night, Cody starts the night off. They're in Chicago. It's a huge deal. Punk is already announced for the show, so it's already a pretty big deal. Cody's out, he's just kind of saying the same type of spiel to get this match more heat. Out of nowhere, The Rock shows up completely unannounced, which more power to WWE for doing that. They have been neglectful in regards to, let's just give the surprises away. Let's promote it on social media. Let's not have anything look authentically surprising. Yet, they've been doing a way better job of that recently, and we get The Rock coming out. All of a sudden, it's Rock and Cody in the ring, which, at this point, we'll dive a little deeper as I progress through this segment, but is Cody versus Rock happening at WrestleMania this next weekend? Or is it a tag match and then The Rock has nothing else other than, probably being involved with Bloodline Rules being at ringside? Because right now it seems like the main event is Rock versus Cody, and that match is not scheduled to take place at WrestleMania 40. Could it take place at SummerSlam? Absolutely. Could it take place at a Saudi show? Absolutely. I think that is a stopgap between WrestleMania 40 and potentially 41, if 41 turns out to be Roman and Rock. We'll dive into the predictions when we get there next week. But I've got a lot of interesting takes on, who takes the pin on night 1, how it leads to night 2, what could happen on night 2, who's going to interfere on night 2, where it leads to SummerSlam and the rest of the year. So we'll see. But Rock and Cody don't really say much until The Rock goes up to Cody, whispers something into his ear, and leaves. Of course, the cameras that were focused on Rock cut away as he actually mouthed what he said to Cody so that you couldn't catch it. You had to assume. And they asked him throughout the night what was said and asked Cody what was said. And Rock said, "I'm not telling you," and asked Cody. And Cody was like, well, kind of push it to the side. So huge segment there. And Cody also, it was really cool to see. So they're in Chicago. Chicago is AEW town, pretty much outside of CM Punk. It's really CM Punk's town, so that's not really too fair. But Cody did say, this city should know when I make a bet, I keep my promise, because the All In show that happened in Chicago that kind of launched the idea for All Elite Wrestling happened in Chicago. And Cody was at the forefront of that, and he said, look, we're going to do a 10,000-seat arena, Dave Meltzer, we're going to do it. And they did it. Shout out to Josh Cross, who, along with myself, planned to go to All In, and I had the tickets printed, and I had them, and couldn't make it out there, so I have unripped tickets from All In. So that's a cool little historical fact from Juice Springsteen's life. Also, the entrance that The Rock had and how the camera cut, it reminded me of Madison Square Garden with the hard cam towards the side of the building where the entranceway comes up, and you get that, like the Royal Rumble 2008 comes to mind, WrestleMania 10, of course, where the side entrance is on the hard cam, and it's just a really, really nice shot. I know a lot of people, in particular behind the scenes, weren't fans of that particular shot when it was going, through history. But I always loved that shot. This Rock entrance, of course, wasn't from a side entrance, but when he came out, the camera was switched to looking at the entranceway with Cody in between the camera and the Rock. So you had him kind of in the foreground, but Rock is in the background coming towards Cody. And the lightning and the song and its final boss, and it's just epic. I am really looking forward to seeing what they do at WrestleMania with those entrances. And speaking of entrances, I did see this on Twitter earlier that, how could Seth Rollins, because he's really lost in the shuffle right now, how could Seth Rollins really, stand out amongst the four? I think Seth Rollins should absolutely dress up in the vein of Rocky Maivia in the light blue, maybe not a Jerry curl, I don't know if he could pull that off, but the like tribal thing he wore around his shoulders and neck, and oh my god, would it be great. I mean, look, he did the Rey Mysterio gear, I believe. He did the Dusty gear as well. I want to say he did another. Oh, he did the Shield gear against Roman. Seth is very good when it comes to creative ways for his entrance gear, well, his ring gear, really, but to have the mind games, get into the head of the opponent, and I think that's a way Seth can get an advantage, even though he's kind of lost in the shuffle as it pertains to WrestleMania. In the grand scheme of things, like fourth behind, the other three. Ricochet, great win against JD McDonough. I mean, he took a hammerlock into a Canadian Destroyer, which was insane. I don't even know how that's even possible, but Ricochet getting more wins, maybe getting a push post-Mania. I'm not sure. I think it all depends on who comes out as IC champion. If Sammy is the champion, I could see Ricochet challenging for it. Primarily because Ricochet's on a roll, but Ricochet was the guy that Gunther beat to win the title a couple of years ago. So it would make a lot of sense for him to kind of get reacclimated into the title picture there. Man, I mean, JD McDonough can work, though. Of course, he's the joke of the Judgment Day, but he put on a great match with Ricochet, and hopefully they've got some more cooking with the Judgment Day, maybe falling apart with different losses. I'm not sure how they're going to articulate that. We still have Damian Priest, which tune in next week to the predictions, where I'm sure myself and Josh Eisenberg will absolutely predict that Damian Priest will cash in. Or hell, probably more likely is that we predict that Priest doesn't cash in, thus making Priest cash in at WrestleMania. We'll see. We will absolutely see what happens there. Oh my god, this next segment. I said Attitude Era, and, no one was really cursing. No one was doing a suck it. There was no bra and panties. There was nothing, crazy. But what happened when CM Punk gets a live mic? He's in Chicago. He has all the confidence in the world. He gets pretty much a loose script, but him, Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins can all ad-lib and kind of bounce off of each other. This promo segment between the three might have been one of the greatest talk segments I think I've seen honestly, and maybe it's the CM Punk effect, but honestly, since like CM Punk's last WWE run, and he referenced the Your arms are too short to box with God. Rock was there. I'm pissed that we did not get a Rock Punk interaction, but you gotta think. Because Punk is now going to be at WrestleMania in at least some capacity, but he's going to be the guest commentator for Seth and Drew. You've got to think Rock and Punk make some sort of interaction backstage. You got to have it. You got to have it. I mean, those two had the Royal Rumble 2013 and Elimination Chamber 2013 matches. I like the Rumble match. Of course, Punk hit Rock at Raw 1000 back in 2012 to set up that whole that whole thing. And we should have got Cena, Punk, and Rock at Mania 29, where Punk could have taken the fall and Cena could have won and it would have been fine. But no, we had to run back Cena and Rock. And look, excuse me, I'm getting tired just thinking about that match. Cena Rock 1 at Mania 28 was so damn good. It really lived up to the expectations, and the right guy won. And even though the second match was very predictable, and it was what it was, and we knew it was the passing of the torch, whatever, I would still be interested in Rock versus Cena 3. I might be the only guy on the planet that wants that, but I'm here. So CM Punk and Rollins and McIntyre get some segments, separately throughout the weeks, and they say their piece about each other, but when they all are in the same arena, they're all in the same promo. Drew there's a couple lines that stand out here. Of course, so Punk teased being an impartial referee. At a certain point when they were like, oh, you can't be a referee, your right arm is hurt. It's got the brace on it. Punk immediately drops to the canvas like a seasoned referee and counts with his left arm. And it was genius. Like I said earlier, he referenced the arms are just too short to box with God promo. Drew McIntyre gets on the mic. He goes, this straight edge thing that you talk about, CM Punk, you don't do drugs, you don't drink, but you spend all of your time in rehab. A killer line from Drew McIntyre, referencing the sobriety that CM Punk legitimately follows. And you can't deny that, and that's all true. But, of course, Drew McIntyre is referencing the rehabilitation of injuries throughout the years that Punk has had to go through, especially during this comeback run from 2021 to now, where, AEW, he got hurt, and now he's hurt now in WWE. And then, CM Punk is going back and forth. The other part about this that I love, and we're probably not going to mention a lot of Rollins because he was just kind of there, unfortunately. Poor bastard. But, when someone is saying something like, oh, they want to do this, and then, CM Punk's like, no, they don't. They don't want that. They don't know. Like, obviously I botched. I don't know what exactly was said in that particular sentence, but I loved how it honestly felt like they were just talking. When you're talking to people and you're in an argument or a heated debate, shout out Triple Threat Theater Volume 4 next Tuesday, you don't have time to rattle off a monologue that was prepared for you or you prepared yourself. It's back and forth. You're cutting people off. You're trying to get your point across while they're trying to get their point across and cut you off. Very organic way of speaking between the three. And they were going back and forth like that, like cutting each other off, getting words in, getting their part of their promo in. So genius. And then the rehab line from McIntyre is one thing. But then McIntyre, he has the shirt on talking about CM Punk. CM Punk, of course, says, never had to make a shirt with another man's name on it to be successful, even though he did wear I'm a Paul Heyman guy shirt, and I broke Big Show's hand, I think, shirt. Certain things like that. But, be that as it may, we all knew what he was saying, and it was a great line. Drew, rips his shirt off to reveal another shirt, the standing on CM Punk's grave shirt, and his return shirt, rather. And he's like, look, I had a tough time getting that shirt off. My arms are too big. I guess that's something you couldn't ever deal with. Like, again, another great shot. McIntyre then sits, CM Punk style on the announce table, refers to himself as the Chosen One, which was his moniker back in 2010 when he first debuted. And who gave him that name but none other than Vince McMahon? So, and we all knew that. Drew calls himself the Chosen One here, reminds CM Punk that he's the Chosen One. CM Punk, without any hesitation, as if this was just cooking in his brain for years. Yet it came off as so authentic because I think it was. And you could tell when they cut back to Drew McIntyre that he was not expecting him referring to himself as the Chosen One to backfire in such a glorious and successful way for the promo's sake. He says, I'm the Chosen One, and CM Punk says, the Chosen One? Who chose you? What was his name? The guy that called you, that named you the Chosen One? I want you to say his name, because it was Vince, and there's no way in hell they're going to say that name. And I believe the line was, what kind of oh man, I'm going to get this line right because I was crying as it happened. It was so funny. What did he say? Oh, so he says the line with the Chosen One, and he says, who chose you? What's his name? Why don't you, tell me who he is? And Punk then goes, what paragon of good virtue chose you? Oh, man. Like, to call out like that, to say it like that, and my God, I mean, the promos that these guys, have been going at the last couple weeks, for Punk to just come in, he doesn't have a match at the show, and just shredded Drew McIntyre. Even though Drew got a lot of great barbs in, but Punk just ad-libbing with that who chose you line. It was just genius. And it cut to Drew, and he's smiling because he had nothing better to say. He knew that he couldn't really defeat that line. It was a genius line by Punk. That is why CM Punk, ultimately, outside of the BS that happened, I don't think why CM Punk, really thrived in AEW is because it was, in AEW, there's almost too much leniency with promos, too much freedom, where say what you gotta say, drop F-bombs, Adam Copeland or Christian or MJF calling Tony Khan an effing mark. Whatever it takes, you just say your piece, we'll edit it, we'll figure it out, just be yourself, be organic. When, to me, I'd almost rather, 80-85% of the stuff be loosely scripted, you follow a script. But when you really get a chance to go off script, when CM Punk is at his best is when he is running right alongside realism, the truth. Real life events. When Punk is parallel to those, he is unmatched on the mic and with his promo skills. So, I mean, I was just howling at the back and forth between them. But I digress. Punk is going to be the guest ring commentator, I do believe, for Seth and Drew on night 2. So that'll be fun. Being in the crowd, you won't be able to hear it, but I'm sure Punk will get involved some way. Backstage, though, we saw Awesome Truth, The New Day, and DIY, and framed perfectly in the center of that promo between those teams, Drew McIntyre talking to Paul Heyman backstage. Is that setting up, something against CM Punk? Like, do I need to figure out, what kind of dirt do you have on Punk as he was a OG Paul Heyman guy? Probably more likely that, he's trying to figure out, hey, Rollins and I have a match on night 2. You guys have a match with Rollins on night 1, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot, on the line, a lot at stake for both nights. Maybe I can help you on night 1, interfere, whatever. You help me out on night 2 in my match. There's different ways that you could interpret the interaction between Drew McIntyre and Paul Heyman, but until WrestleMania happens, we really won't know the true extent of that conversation. But I love it was perfectly framed, like I said, a great way to see the shot between the two in the middle of another promo. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe they'll have something on SmackDown or, like I said, Raw next week. Barclays Center, April 1st. Go home edition of Raw. Rock will be there. It is going to be insane. Cody did tell Jackie Redmond, though, before we get to this last segment, that he would not reveal what Rock told him. Outside of that, it was a promise he could not keep. But we'll get there. Andrade defeated Giovanni Vinci. It should have been Ivar. I'm sure Matt Presto was thrilled to see that it wasn't Ivar. I don't know what kind of axe he has to grind with Ivar, but Ivar is a solid in-ring competitor. Everybody cannot win every week, so sometimes someone has to lose, and Ivar has been that guy. Matt Presto, you were that guy in WPW for a long time, so you very well understand what it's like to be on the mid-card. I digress. More interesting stuff between Ripley and Becky Lynch, of course. Dom Mysterio, he took a right hand. That was fun as we build towards those two in a match, Rhea and Becky. I really still think Rhea could walk out as champion, especially with the comments that Becky made recently where she said she doesn't need a title, to be validated or whatever. So, hey, whatever. Bronson Reed gets a win over Sami Zayn. Now, see, this is where I can connect the previous statement with Ivar, Matt Presto, having a problem with Ivar being someone that's, quote-unquote, nobody losing, and no one's going to believe it. Sami Zayn, who has a match against Gunther at WrestleMania, lost to Bronson Reed 2 weeks away from WrestleMania. But, Bronson Reed's nobody. He hasn't won anything. So it doesn't matter. It's week to week. It doesn't matter, who loses week to week. Anything can happen the next week. If you'd watched wrestling in the 90s, which I know you really hadn't to my knowledge, Vince McMahon would always say, anything can happen in the World Wrestling Federation. And I tend to believe that still reigns pretty true even in 2024. But, Zayn doesn't get the win. And he talked to Gable after the fact. Could we get a Gable and Sami Zayn, Rocky, Mickey type deal? Not sure. But I'm looking forward to it. Chad said, you need a new approach. Are they going to do a training montage? I feel like everybody's going to get a Rocky montage at some point. We're going to get Meek Mill probably introducing Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. There's going to be a lot of special entrances at WrestleMania, so maybe they won't add any more matches. It'll just be promos and entrances and pyro. Jey Uso defeats Shinsuke Nakamura, and that only happens because there was chaos. We had Seth Rollins, Jimmy Uso, Solo Sikoa, Cody, Drew, all brawling, everything. And it all went backstage until The Rock shows up, attacks Rhodes, beat him down, kept saying, look at you, look at you. Just trash talking. It's so funny to me. The Rock has been doing movies steadily for like 20 years now. Every time he's been back to wrestling, it's been like WrestleMania 6-second match against Eric Rowan. I was lucky enough to be in attendance for that WrestleMania. That was my first WrestleMania, and I'm so glad I got to see that historical event take place. But outside of that, random entrances, random rock bottoms, a people's elbow here and there. The last time he was wrestling was 11 years ago. Now to see him fully ensconced in in promo battles, in huge time segments, massive social media promo posts, and doing a backstage beatdown to close out Raw, beating up Cody Rhodes, throwing him into his tour bus. It was raining, which you could not have planned any better. It looked at, they say cinema, as is pro wrestling cinema these days. Cody getting beat up, getting bloodied, while The Rock berated him, talked trash, again, bloodied Cody, smeared the blood from Cody's head onto the weight belt that said Mama Rhodes. Brutal. And all the while it was raining, it was pouring out there. And it looked amazing. It definitely was like cinematic. It literally looked like they had just filmed it on a rainy night. They're like, oh, this would be great if we could get this. It all happened organically, and it could not have worked out better for Raw. However, and again, we're not going to dive into the predictions until next week. So don't worry. We're not going to dive into that big of a tangent just yet. But, WWE has these production trucks that are very obviously seen. They've got current stars. They have legends. Certain ones are parked in certain spots. It's really not a big deal. However, Cody is getting his ass handed to him by The Rock. And Rock's like, look at you, right in front of your heroes. All your heroes, they're all falling. No one's going to be able to help you. All this. He just keeps talking trash. As Rock is saying this and beating down Cody, in the background is one trailer. Who's on the trailer? John Cena and Steve Austin. I'm not going to say that both guys are going to come out during Bloodline Rules, assuming that it is Bloodline Rules and helping Cody win at WrestleMania. But I might be saying that Steve Austin and John Cena might help Cody win at WrestleMania next week on the prediction show. And you'll be able to hear it as it unfolds. But I thought it was a very, very telling coincidental shot, maybe? I think it was very obvious, and I'm here for it. That's what I'm here. I want that. So, it was such an interesting way to end the show. It was so different than anything they've done in years. Not to mention, next week, like I said, so The Rock was not announced this week in Chicago. Only Punk was. That was really the draw. Rock surprise shows up, beats down Cody. Amazing beatdown, and you're going to get Rock, whose appearance is announced for next week in the Barclays Center on April 1st. Go home show for WrestleMania for Raw. I don't know if he'll be on the SmackDown or not, but I'd say it's a safe bet. Maybe. I think Rock and Roman are going to be on Jimmy Fallon, I think, next week. And if that happens, I think you should have Cody and Seth kind of interrupt and interfere that program. But Cody being able to probably get his receipts back from that beatdown, I think on Raw next week will be great as we go into WrestleMania, of course. So we'll see if that's what they want to do. I do think that's going to happen. But we had blood. We had profanity. Of course, The Rock was cursing. That's what happens when you F with the final boss. We had the Drew, Seth, Punk interaction. This show was incredible, and I hope we get more of these. If you could give me 5 episodes out of 52 of the year of Raw like that, I would be thrilled. 5. I would take 5 out of 52. I would take less than 10% of Raws, with this feel, an intro and an outro that made sense. The segments were really, solid. And it just, everything fired. Everything fired on all cylinders. WWE's on another level right now. At the right time. This is the biggest WrestleMania. They say it every year, but this is the 40th. It's the TKO. It's Endeavor. It's this new regime. It's without Vince. They want to make sure they show this is our thing. Forget the Super Bowl. Forget the Olympics. Forget the Eras Tour. WrestleMania is the ticket for entertainment. And I think they're going to show it. They're going to prove it next weekend. So I'm here for it. You know who wasn't here for it were the fans in attendance, if there were any, at Dynamite this past week in Quebec City, a French-speaking area there. The show was all right, but man, the fans did not seem to be shown out there. I'm really only going to comment on a couple things. Ospreay and Shibata had a fun match. Ospreay is just great. His again, the participation of the crowd for his entrance, I think is fantastic. He's so good in the ring, of course, but now his charisma for promos and just his aura, as the kids say, is fantastic. So he gets the win, of course, as he looks to defeat Bryan Danielson at Dynasty. I'm gonna actually make sure pull up that card. I'm not sure if anything additional has been announced. Actually, there has been. I'll say that here in a moment. But we had the Young Bucks defeating Private Party, which they did execute. Gin and Juice. Private Party did hit my namesake move. I have a Pittsburgh Penguins jersey that is the Gin and Juice 94 Snoop Dogg jersey. And Private Party was shouting out the juice box. So shout out Private Party for that. But they lost to the Young Bucks. So you hardly knew ye. 4-way match. Winner gets a title shot at Dynasty with Mercedes Moné on commentary because that's where she belongs. God, they are missing with this Mercedes Moné thing. I'm sure. Here's the thing. Willow Nightingale won the match. It's going to be Willow Nightingale versus Julia Hart for the TBS title at Dynasty. I almost guarantee Willow's going to win the title, and then it's going to be Willow versus Mercedes at Double or Nothing, which is fine, and Mercedes will probably win. But I don't get why we had to wait this whole time to get Mercedes, and now we've just gotten promos. Then on the next week we get another promo that she threw to a promo package of herself, and now we get her on commentary. I don't know. Why is she just talking? I want to see her in the ring. AEW signed Mercedes Moné because she's one of the best women's wrestlers of this generation. Not because she's great on the mic, and she's good, she's okay. That's not her strong suit. And this is AEW. This is where you would showcase wrestling, and yet you're having her not wrestle. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that they just flip a switch and bang, wrestling, wins titles, goes, into a win streak, takes the title off Willow or Julia, whoever it is. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm just not satisfied with it thus far. It's frustrating, to say the least. Best Friends, Undisputed Kingdom, quarterfinal for the tag title tournament. Best Friends get the win. Don't know what the hell's going on with the Undisputed Kingdom, but not a lot of good. So right now, the semifinals are Young Bucks, Best Friends next week on Dynamite. And then the winner of the Infantry and FTR versus the winner of Top Flight and Ricky Starks and Big Bill. That will be taking place this Saturday on Collision. So those two matches, the final semifinals will take place on next week's Dynamite, and then the final match for the tag titles will take place at Dynasty on the 21st of April. Main event, though, Takeshita, Swerve, Strickland. Damn, these guys went hard. Another great match between Swerve and an opponent on a big moment here. And Takeshita, who he arguably had the best match of the year thus far against Will Ospreay at Revolution. So just a lot of great stuff, man. A lot of great stuff between these two guys. And Swerve gets the win, and it is now official as well. Samoa Joe defends the world title, the AEW world title, against Swerve Strickland. And like I said, we'll get the Julia Hart, Willow Nightingale AEW TBS title. the finals for the AEW World Tag Titles, and then Bryan Danielson, Will Ospreay in a singles dream match at the pay-per-view. So that should be a fun show on April 21st. So here's my last little portion of this AEW of it all. The ratings come out not great. 747,000. A real not great demo. But here's my issue with everything. And I mean, look, I'm not gonna lie here. I love AEW. I am a big AEW fan. I was a huge fan of the Young Bucks and Cody, and like literally they created a promotion based off of my love for independent wrestling throughout the years. And I'm not the only person that had that same sentiment. Like all, fans of Ring of Honor, PWG, New Japan, and TNA, and anybody that watched independent wrestling or stuff that wasn't WWE, the alternative, all those years, to finally get a promotion with, and if you're a WCW fan like myself, you get a show on TNT, on Turner Networks now, TBS for Dynamite now, with a, Turner budget, pretty much any budget you want, although that was the WCW model. This is the Tony Khan model because, his father and the ownership of the Jaguars and soccer team and a lot of money in that family. So you get like a perfect storm, and this company it's the 5th year, and I love it. I'm so glad that there's a reason WWE is on fire, and it's not just because they organically became on fire. There is competition that is on TV each week that, might not be chasing the tail of WWE, but it is so, much more than just a TNA where they get a couple thousand buys on a pay-per-view. They're getting 125, 150,000 buys on pay-per-view. They're on big TV every week. They took Cody to another level. Like Cody refining his craft in AEW, parlayed that to a huge WWE run, and now he's the biggest babyface in the company. Jade Cargill, who's going to wrestle potentially sooner rather than later, who's going to be on SmackDown tonight, was in AEW pretty much her entire wrestling career, if I'm not mistaken. And now she's parlayed that into a WWE run. I'm a fan of all that. But, and this goes for WWE, because I'm a fan of them too. I was a WCW fan, but I don't have WCW anymore, so I'm just going to love wrestling, right? I'm done with tribalism. I was done with that a long time ago. I don't like when there seems to be an arrogance or a stubbornness when things aren't going the right way or going a way that they want. And like I said, if WWE is great, it's great. I'll say it's great. I'll remark. I'll give praise. If it sucks, you're going to hear from me about it as well. Same goes with AEW. If it sucks, I'm going to tell you. If it's great, I'm going to scream it from the top of the mountain. What I don't like is, and I get it, but, there was a podcast on ad-free shows, Strictly Business with Eric Bischoff, co-hosted with John Alba, friend of the show because he's friends with Josh Eisenberg. They're close, and Alba has this show with Strictly Business with Eric Bischoff, and I enjoyed the show. It was a take on the business side of pro wrestling, and it was current stuff. It was a nice little, trip outside of just going over classic stuff and just crapping on Dave Meltzer all the time. And even though that still happened with Bischoff, it was a different avenue of a podcast. And here's the other thing. I like Dave Meltzer. I like Eric Bischoff. I'm allowed to like multiple people that, even if they hate each other, that doesn't mean I have to pick a side. That is insanity, and that's not how I live my life. And I like Tony Khan. Okay, so John Alba posts the other night, hey, this is the last episode it's going to be airing with him and I, and we just couldn't figure out our schedules. It was just not going the way we wanted it to, and we're just going to move on from this, and that's that. 3:58 in the morning. Tony Khan goes on Twitter, responds to the tweet, sunsetting this fraud of a business podcast before the next AEW media deal is a wise choice. Hashtag AEW Dynamite. 2 or 3 multiple things here. Clearly, he believes that this podcast was going to be discussing the media rights deal. Does that mean that the media rights deal is imminent? Are they waiting for something? Is it done? Is it about to have the ink dry? Where are we at with that? Secondly, I know Tony Khan does not like Eric Bischoff, even though he had Eric on TV. And Eric has fired back with that. Like, Tony Khan was like, oh, you're a washed-up has-been or something. But then Eric, responded by saying, legendary has-been, or whatever the phrasing was. But he took the phraseology that Tony Khan put as the header for his nameplate as he walked out on AEW TV and utilized it, to his own benefit. So they don't really like each other. And Tony Khan just, saying that out of nowhere. I know you don't like Eric Bischoff, but what the hell did John Alba do to you? He is a hardworking guy. He's been doing, hosting TV and the Living the Gimmick podcast way back when, and just he's done a lot of great work. I met him in Orlando, Mania 33 weekend. Great guy. Really fun guy. And like I said, friends with Josh Eisenberg, who's a friend of mine, friend of the show. And I like him. He's a nice guy. He was really nice to me, and the interactions I have with him were nothing but the best. And even if they weren't, why he caught this stray when Eric Bischoff is the guy that Tony Khan doesn't like. Although, maybe Tony Khan doesn't like John Alba, but God, 3:58 in the morning, and you feel the need as the owner of a pro wrestling company that cannot sell out more than 4,000 seats to roast someone on Twitter. What are we doing? How old are you? And again, I like Tony Khan. I like all of these guys that I'm talking about, but the decisions that they make are nuts. Are we, are your ratings going to improve because you wanted to dunk on John Alba and Eric Bischoff? Is that going to help your ticket sales? Does your media deals and your media rights deal hinge on tweets like that at 4 in? Is that a part of the quotient there, the ratio of how things work? Do you need to 3:50? Like Patrick waking up at 3 a.m. for a Krabby Patty. Tony Khan's got an alarm at 3:58 in the morning. Oh, I gotta dunk on Eric Bischoff. It's just ridiculous. I think it's stupid. I think it's petty. And I know I'm here for pettiness. I'm not saying this as a hypocrite. Eric Bischoff, every week, called out Vince McMahon. He challenged him to come to Slamboree 98. Vince did the Huckster and the Nacho Man skits. This has been going back and forth for a very long time, but you know what they did? They had it on their programming because it helped further their programming, or they thought it would. Tweeting about it does nothing. Fans of the wrestlers that you put on TV, if they're only big on Twitter, does not translate to ratings, and you'll see that whenever you have a lot of great talent on this week and it gets 747,000 viewers. Way worse than the last 3 weeks when you had one of the biggest women's wrestlers not even wrestle on your card because you don't know how to use her correctly and you just signed her. What are we doing? Stop tweeting it at fans. Stop going above and beyond to just take shots at people at 3 in when you should be focused on your company succeeding. If you didn't have the financial backing that you do, I don't believe you'd be wasting your... I think you would notice that it was a waste of your time, and you would be well versed and be so much better off to, focus yourself on some other facets of your product, your programming, your company that you run. Whew. My rant is over, but I get it. I'm here for dunking on people. It's fun, but it's the type of it's who did it and what time they did it to somebody, but it wasn't just to somebody. It was in response to someone who really is not the guy you want to go after. He's kind of just the middle guy. He co-hosted the show. Like, what did John Alba do to you? Let me hear it, Tony. Let's hear it, Tony. I'm waiting. Crickets. All right. Enough fire. Let's get to the Ask Juice segment and close this puppy out before we launch into WrestleMania week. Ask Juice, top 3 or 5 and bottom 3 or 5 WrestleManias of all time. I'll keep it short and sweet and do my favorite and my least favorite because Triple Threat Theater is over 2 hours and we got all those stats that you can listen to next week. So next Tuesday. My least favorite Mania, I've got to say, is WrestleMania 29. I was not alive for 2. I was 2 years old for 11. Man, 29 was not great. And I was in the thick of it as a wrestling fan. CM Punk was dissing Paul Bearer, who just died, and he had a match with The Undertaker, and Undertaker's entrance was amazing. And that was the only good part about the show. The next night was more exciting when Dolph cashed in Money in the Bank. But it was not great. The Shield had a match with Team Hell No and Ryback. What are we doing? Fandango defeated Chris Jericho in Fandango's first match. What are we Cena Rock 2, like I said, and the Shield's entrance was dope though. I will give them that. My favorite WrestleMania, though, of course, WrestleMania 17. I mean, TLC 2, the Gimmick Battle Royal. Austin and Rock. Their second match, Shane versus Vince in a street fight with Foley as the referee with the Linda thing and Kurt Angle, Benoit. These are just Taker, Triple H in their first of 3 matches at WrestleMania. And there's still, there's a great hardcore match that's fun. Man, there's so much good stuff on that show. I cannot recommend it enough. And again, you'll hear all about it next Tuesday on the Triple Threat Theater Volume 4. Ask Juice, top 3 favorite or recommended WCW pay-per-views to re-watch. All right, let's do this in chronological order. Spring Stampede 1994. An amazing tag street fight. Nasty Boys versus Cactus Jack and Max Payne. Flair versus Steamboat 5 years after their trilogy of matches, but they still had a lot left in the tank. Vader versus The Boss, a.k.a. Big Boss Man, and a Hoss fight for the ages. Sting versus Rick Rude. Steve Austin versus The Great Muta. This is ridiculous. Again, this is just like WrestleMania 17. Those 2 pay-per-views, Mania 17 and Spring Stampede 94, are my 2 favorite shows of all time. So Spring Stampede 94, then I would say Uncensored 1997. The end of that show is possibly the most exciting end to a WCW pay-per-view of all time. It ended like a Nitro, but it was clearly bigger than that, and it was great. I'm not going to spoil it, but you should totally watch Uncensored 97. And then I will say Spring Stampede 99. What the hell? Great opener between Hoovy and Blitzkrieg. Fatal 4-way match where DDP wins the world title for the first time. just great stuff. Arguably the last great top to bottom WrestleMania, WCW pay-per-view was Spring Stampede 99. Ask Juice, most non-wrestling related thing or event I'm looking forward to during Mania weekend. Everything I'm doing is wrestling related. Even if I'm at a food establishment, I feel like I might be asking people to give me their opinions on, Cody and Roman. But I don't know. I feel like I'm going to get a couple of cheesesteaks that weekend. It's going to be pretty touristy. I know Josh Cross and and some others. I know a lot of people that are going to be running the Rocky Steps. I think it'd be cool if I would run the Rocky Steps, although I messed up my foot a couple of weeks ago. So hopefully by next weekend it's good enough to at least jog up the steps. But we'll see how that goes. Non-wrestling related. Everything I'm doing there is wrestling related. A vintage pop-up, a block party with wrestling and more vendors and more vintage merch and potentially the WrestleMania, like a tailgate that's just going to be wrestling themed. So I don't know, not much, but maybe just the food. It's not technically wrestling related, but I want to turn it into wrestling related. Like I said, with the the potential audio possibilities there. So we'll see about that. And then I believe the only other one. Well, will we be getting any WrestleMania 15 references at WrestleMania 40 only because it's in Philly? Maybe they'll show Bart Gunn getting knocked out again. Maybe they'll highlight that as a video package, like the whole WrestleMania 15 as it was the last one in Philly. I'd prefer them show Slamboree 94 highlights because that was also in Philly, and that's arguably another great wrestling WCW pay-per-view. Donnie, I would check out Slamboree 94, the last pay-per-view without Hogan. Spring Stampede 94 is the last pay-per-view that Hogan was not even a part of it. That was in April of 94. May of 94, it had already been kind of talked about, and Hogan's name had been brought up. Of course, he didn't sign until June, and then July is Bash the Beach. But Slamboree, they were talking about Hogan. Spring Stampede, there was nothing talked about with Hogan, so it's like the last free WCW event without Hogan, which is great. It was a great show. I don't know, any other Mania 15 references? I'm just not sure, but we'll see. I believe, what else we got here? I think there might have been one more. This was, it's rhetorical, but I'll answer it. Is MVP Baseball 2005 the greatest baseball game of all time, and how much do I love the soundtrack? I love MVP Baseball 2005. I do believe it's the greatest baseball game of all time. It's arguably one of the top 5 sports games of all time. I love this game. It was the simplicity of the controls mixed with a lot of detail for back in 2004 when the game came out. I know I had it on GameCube, and I know that this is small potatoes compared to the graphics now, but you have to put yourself in the perspective of 2004 when the game came out. If you've ever been to Pittsburgh or you've seen Pittsburgh from the perspective of PNC Park and you've looked out to the outfield, past the outfield into the city, there is a building that has an arch kind of taken out of the middle, a chunk of it, and it is indented in where there's a yard, but the building is kind of it's like a U shape. It kind of looks like a tunnel, but I cannot recall what the building's called, but either way, you see that building in the legit real skyline at PNC Park. In the video game, with these very, very baseline PS2, GameCube, Xbox graphics, they have a skyline of Pittsburgh for PNC Park, and they have that building in particular detailed in there. And I just thought stuff like that, they didn't have to put that in, but they did, and it was amazing. And I mean, there's so many great songs on there that just the whole the IROC song, and Dropkick Murphys, of course, with Tessie. Man, just memories playing that game all the time growing up, and then playing it in college. I've played it since college. I can't get enough of it, so. Wow. Thank you, everybody, Wrestling Nation, for Ask Juice this week. I look forward to seeing most of you, I believe, at Philly at some point for WrestleMania weekend. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of inquisitive inquiries and interview-esque entertainment that I will be trying to bring forth during WrestleMania weekend. Stay tuned to my social media presence, Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram, Juicy Steen on Twitter. You're going to see a lot of interesting updates this weekend, in particular about the podcast, and then an idea of the schedule for next week. And the episodes will be scheduled as they are. And then in regards to programming from WrestleMania that I get, any sort of video, audio will be posted, on my, Twitter feed. But I'm planning on, putting all the audio, assuming I get some decent amount of audio together, interviews with fans and stuff like that. That would probably be its own standalone, like, audio vlog, or I guess an audio blog, whatever. I don't really know how to phrase it. That will be coming, once I'm back from WrestleMania and I get a chance to edit it all in and release that. And I probably will do another episode detailing the whole weekend as a reflection. So that's really all I got. WrestleMania is next week. This is best time of year. I mean, this particular WrestleMania season, even on the AEW side, where they are leading up to a pay-per-view in 3 more weeks after WrestleMania, which they hadn't done. It was normally just Double or Nothing in May that you had to wait for, with a lull in between. Now they've realized, hey, we got to put more pay-per-views out there. We got to get, show to show and have more hype to each show. And I like that. And with WrestleMania on the horizon, The Rock being involved, everybody is on top of their game. CM Punk's on top of his game, and he's just going to be a commentator. Drew McIntyre has done the best work on the mic and in ring that he's done in his career. We're going to get Jimmy and Jey Uso in a one-on-one match. Gunther might be dethroned. Like, so much great stuff has happened over the last couple of months for WrestleMania leading up to it, and I think the culmination is going to be something special, so really looking forward to seeing that live. If you're in Philly, you see me around, the Newport hat, yell out the name, Juice, which I'm sure Wrestling Nation will have something to say similar to that as I see them throughout the weekend. Can't wait to see everybody out there. I've been looking at the weather day by day as we've gotten closer, and as we get to the end of this particular episode, right now, if you're coming in Friday, it looks like it's going to be some wind, but a high of 55 and a low of 40. Saturday looks great, a high of 60, a low of 40, and hopefully Sunday is very similar. I don't believe we're going to see any participation in the forecast as far as I'm concerned. Closer to the weekend, I'm sure I'll be posting on Twitter about, better get your jackets. You better wear a hat. But we're going to see thousands of wrestling fans in shorts because we're all nuts. But yeah, can't wait. WrestleMania week, next week. Stay tuned. A lot of exciting stuff to launch the Juice Box into its second year. I know that this is already the second year, but I kind of liken it to WrestleMania, where even though the show started in January, very obviously to start the year, I love it's WrestleMania. I want to really do something special. This is a big time of the year. And so it'll be reflected as you see. And I'll be describing all that stuff, like I said, on social media. JuicySteen.podbean.com, Apple Podcasts. Drop a review on iTunes, Google Podcasts for another week or so, Spotify as well. Rate and review the Juice Box. It really helps out this show. Even one review just grows a little bit by a little bit, brick by brick, podcast by fans for the fans. So I'm Juice Springsteen. Enjoy WrestleMania. I'm sure you guys will hear a little bit of a preview of the WrestleMania, culmination as we get closer on the predictions episodes. We'll have our final thoughts before the show of shows, the granddaddy of them all, the 2-night spectacular that is WrestleMania. But you'll hear all that next week. Hopefully you guys enjoy the Juice Box during WrestleMania week, and stay tuned for the Juice Box during all of WrestleMania weekend going forward. So I'm Juice Springsteen. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you guys enjoy everything in the next week and a half and beyond right here on The Juice Box. That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.